and welcome to the walkthrough of the newest design just put out called Ripped. So we're going to take a look at the layers just to give you an idea for what's going on in this design. It's going to be pretty standard in a lot of ways, but hopefully you find some cool and interesting ways to apply this to your images. So let's just jump into this and take a look here. So looking at our layer stack, we're going to see right at the top we have our color grading layers. So that's giving us some little bit of color and contrast, a little punch to it in here, but we can expand this group. There's 3 different layers in here. Feel free to play with opacities, turn these layers off and on to create your own custom look for what you would like there. So below our custom or our color grading layers are these are some highlight boosting type of layers. Basically I use these for subject faces to pop those highlights out. And we'll take a look at how I'll use that in just a minute when we turn our subject on. Below that we just have some normal text layers for the name here. Again, these texts, the samples that I use, the links are on the product page for these, so you can go find those if you like these same fonts and want to use those, you can. Below that we have a couple layers here for these like foreground shards going on. So these can be turned on and off or resized, but then they can also be easily colored. We'll see we've got some a solid color fill layer just attached to these, so you could just double click on this, and then you could use the sample tool to sample a background color, jersey color, what have you, or you could come over and pick your own and easily change the color of those. So below those shards we'll see marked in red as always groups where I notate to place the subjects at for the effect. So we have our first foreground subject group right here, and we'll look at that in just a second. Below that we have some more text. So this is going to be layered in behind the subject. Again, just normal editable text. You just double click and change that like any normal text. Below that, this layer is currently turned off, but this is a heat map layer. So you turn this on and it creates this heat map effect, which I think looks really cool. It's really different if you're looking for something to stand out. That's going to be an easy way to make those really pop. But we can turn that off for now. Keep going. Now we have some background texture. This is just getting thrown over everything just to help give it a more graphic and interesting texture to the whole background. Below that we can see we have a clipped layer here. This is a hue saturation layer which is clipped to this next subject group. But let's take a quick look at what's going on here. So first of all, this clipped hue saturation layer is if we want to colorize all of this background. So this, if we want to do a color cast to match a school color or uniform color, we can do that. And we can see up here in the properties, it's just a hue saturation adjustment layer. So you can move this hue all around however you would like. You could change the saturation of that if you wanted to make it black and white. Of course, you could do that. Now, I'd say if you want to make this lighter or darker, my recommendation would be to change this from a color blend mode just back to normal. And then you could actually use your lightness slider if you wanted to make that more dramatic or brighter. You could do that as well. Alright, so we'll just temporarily turn that off for a second. So then if we open this group, we'll see that this is our masking, creating that ripped effect on the background. But within this group is going to have where our subject goes. But also I've got a few just standard backgrounds in here. So the idea with this design is you can drop in your own custom background, your own field, your own gem. If you want to put a custom texture in there, you're just easily going to drop it in this group to fit, and it's already going to get applied into your background here. So then you can just layer your subject over top. But by default, I have a football field in here, a sample gymnasium, a sample baseball field, and just a sample golf background. Again, just to give you an idea of what you can throw in here. There's a few samples in there to start with. Again, we'll turn that subject on just a minute and take a look. And below that is just the background gradient. So if you wanted that whole background to go dark, you could just turn that off. Otherwise, it's going to fade from light to dark. Of course, you could change the opacity to different degrees as well as desired. And then below that is just an overall background texture. So if you wanted that whole background to go white, you could certainly do that. Or you could change it to any other color as well. Again, with just a simple solid color picker change. Alright, so all of that's available there. So let's turn this back on and let's turn our subjects on. Now first, let's just open the background subject group here, so this bottom red group, and let's turn a subject on. So you're going to see it's going to layer a subject in right over top of whatever background you drop in below them. So let's resize our subject and see how we want this guy to fit here. Let's link this, and then we'll drag this to uniformly size. So let's say we want to layer him in. I want to see his face, of course, so we'll kind of put him like right up in here. That looks pretty interesting. Alright, I like that. He's layered in. Let's turn our foreground subject on. Now, in the foreground subject group, you're going to see there's two groups, actually. So the first group is just doing some masking to fade the bottom of the subject. Then on the second group, there's a drop shadow applied. So if we turn our subject on, let's position him a little bit here. You'll see there's this drop shadow that's getting applied just to help the subject kind of stand out from the background a little in this kind of like punchy type of way. If you don't want that drop shadow, of course, you could just turn this layer off if you wanted, or you could simply drag your subject just into the first group, not the second group, and that drop shadow won't get applied. So whatever you like the look of, you can feel free to do that. That's the beauty of templates, is you can make them look how you would like. So let's size this guy a little bit here in the front. Maybe bring him just a little smaller, something like this. And then I'm just going to play around with where we want to position him. I think I like him overlapping this text over here a bit. Looks pretty interesting. Alright, let's go somewhere about right there. It looks pretty good to me. And now we just need to decide, how we want to do the color on this. Now we could do the heat map effect, which again I think looks really cool. It's very different. Or we could come colorize this. So hue saturation. Now there's school colors like orange and gray and black. So we could push this more to that orange tone. Something more like that looks pretty cool. We could see what it looks like desaturated, but I think I like some color in there so it really stands out. Alright, so let's do that. Let's change some of our text here to match up. So again, the first name, if you wanted to change, it would just be double click, type in the new name, simple as that. On the background text here, so the dragons, we could do the Eagles, and let's apply. Then I'm just going to resize this, Command or Control T, and hold my Shift key. And we can just drag this on up. Then I'm just going to arrow over to line it back up with that text like that. There we go. That looks pretty cool. Now if we come on up, let me tweak that background orange just a bit more while we're here. Why not? Make it just a shade more to the orange. There we go. If we look at our facial highlight layers here, we've got two of them. If we expand this out, we're going to see that this bottom one is for lighter skin tones and the top one's for darker skin tones. So I'm just going to come to our layer mask right here, grab a white brush. I'll just bring the flow up a good bit here. And let's just paint over his face here. And now you're going to see this is a solid color fill layer using a soft light blend mode. So we can actually double click on here and we can kind of put a bit of a color cast into that highlight. So if we wanted to make it a little more neutral, we could go to white. You could actually sample a skin tone and then come up into a light version of those skin tones to make it a little more natural. Alright, something kind of like that. And then I would say we could bring the opacity down a little bit. We don't need that full strength, but it's just enough to make that face pop and get that attention on our subject where we really want it, which I think looks super cool. And so there we go. You can see we can even come down here. So let's say on these shards we wanted to match to this orange. I would just click this on the jersey. And same thing down here, double click, pick one of these oranges here. There we go. We can make them black. Again, you could do anything you want. Maybe we want to make it more of the gray tone here, which that looks pretty cool too. Let's do the same thing here. Pick one of these. So yeah, have fun, play around with this, and I can't wait to see what you guys put together. Hope you find a lot of cool ways to use this and find that you get a lot of business out of these. See you in the next one.